Hello, welcome to Good Questions, Good Answer. Today we have another interesting question from our audience and our Venerable Sander, our co-teaching monk, to helping us solve the problem. Venerable Sander, are you there?
Yes, thank
Okay,
you for having me on the program.
that's good. Well, let's get ready for our questions. Well, the audience asking us that, what is success? What defines success? Can you give your opinion on this about what defines success in Buddhism view?
In Buddhism, we cannot explain the word success just in one aspect. There are
Right.
at least two aspects to it:
Okay.
the
What they are?
material aspect and then the spiritual aspect. Material success is, of course, being successful in earning a living
Mm-hmm.
and doing so in a right way, in a way that you're not hurting anyone else.
Mm.
And spiritual success is more about developing good qualities of the heart, developing yourself on the path to being a good human being, and eventually attaining enlightenment, which is the highest goal
I
of
see.
Buddhism.
So we
And this
follow.
is sometimes further distinguished into three levels of Buddhist teachings. So you could say that when the Buddha taught, he taught in several levels,
Mm.
depending on how every listener, what they were ready for, what they
Right.
wanted to listen to.
In other words, so it has to be set in different levels, so that way they can define success and set that goal in different level, like this.
You could say the first aim in life, the first level of teaching in Buddhism,
Mm-hmm.
is the short-term goal. It basically comes down to you just want to be a good person, you don't want to hurt anyone, you want to take care of yourself and your family, making sure there's bread on the table,
Mm-hmm.
making sure your children and your wife or your husband is well fed. It's very a basic kind of idea of survival, but in a good way. We're not hurting anyone.
Mm-hmm.
So this still corresponds to some level of Buddhist teaching. Even the Buddha, who we believe is enlightened
Mm-hmm.
teacher who could teach at a very high level, still taught at this very basic level to some people who were just ready for that level, who were not able to receive higher teachings yet.
Mm.
So he just explained how to lead a good life,
Mm-hmm.
doing the basic kind of stuff
I
like
see.
earning your living and taking good care of your possessions.
I
In
see.
total, there is quite some detail about that.
So what about the second goal then? That want to be going higher, step up from this life?
Yeah, so the long-term goal is more spiritual success.
Mm.
It's more about developing a good heart, not just being a good person in the common sense of the word, but actually developing a good heart, developing good qualities of the heart and mind, which are going to help you not only in this lifetime, but according to Buddhism, also in future lifetimes.
I see.
And this
So,
eventually leads to the highest goal of Buddhism, which is to attain nirvana or enlightenment, which is the the moment when you overcome the inner obstructions like greed, hatred, and delusion. You are able to overcome these limitations of mind and heart and develop your true humanity and attain enlightenment.
I
This
see.
is the highest goal in Buddhism.
Right.
And this is, of course, going much farther than just material happiness and success.
Can you clarify one by one how can we attain each goal?
In
Right.
fact, the Buddha did talk a lot about economics,
Mm-hmm.
and he did talk about how to survive on a daily basis and how to make sure that you are economically stable.
Mm-hmm.
There's four things that he gave advice about. First of all, he said you have to be diligent, which he called quite nicely accomplishment of initiative. And with this, he meant that you have to earn a living diligently. You have to strive to become better in your work. You have to make sure you get all the work done.
Right.
Then the accomplishment of protection is taking care of your possessions, making sure that what you already have is not lost. And generally, this is about taking care of the financial stability and the future of your family, and making sure everything is well protected. It also might include making sure you have a good
Friendship.
security in your house or something like that, but don't overdo it.
Right.
And then there's, I'm just skipping number 3. I'm getting back to that in a moment.
Okay.
And there's balanced livelihood. Balanced livelihood is about making sure that we spend in the right way. So if you are earning a living and you're making sure that you have a good insurance and all that and good security, you could still lose it all if you spend it on gambling, if you have gambling debts or something like that.
I see.
So it's important that we also make sure that we spend our money in a responsible way. That is the basic economics.
Right.
That
So
the Buddha talked about.
okay.
But he also had a spiritual thing that he added in there, and that is number 3. In fact, he seems to mostly talk about material and economic qualities here. But then there is a little back door. The Buddha, he does say that you have to have good friends, which do have spiritual qualities like, for example, generosity, wisdom. Even though yourself might not have these qualities, you still need to have friends who do have these qualities. So you have examples that you can grow further.
Since you explained quite well, before we go further on this, I think we might want to clarify a little bit. How can a person be success in this life? So can you explain a little bit?
So whether you're more the spiritual person and you define success more in a spiritual sense,
Yeah.
or you define success more in a material sense, you say, well, I'm not really into all those noble little stories you tell me, but I do believe that I have to make sure my family is well taken care of. Well, whether what kind of person you are, you're gonna have to need a method to be successful in life.
Okay.
And that is where we call the itipata in Buddhism.
Okay. So can you clarify what are they?
Yeah. So these are like 4 practical ways of looking at how to get work done. And you can use it both spiritually, for example, when you use it with regard to meditation, and you can use it with regard to your work in general.
Okay.
So the first thing you need, whatever you want to accomplish in life, is desire. You have a willingness to do what needs to be done.
Okay.
So the thing is not to be bored with your work. When you talk about meditation, it's also important that you take care of how you keep it lively. Find ways to keep your meditation alive. Maybe use a slightly different method sometimes, a slightly different technique. Change your emphasis a little bit. So it's important also to think about the benefits. So whether you're meditating or whether you're talking about your job, it's all important that you recognize which benefits does this job provide for me. It gives me financial stability, okay. But maybe it also has a sort of benefit for society, right? If you are a doctor, you're going to heal people. So the second thing is that we need to have effort. It's not just enough to have a willingness to do something. We actually need to get to it. And to put an effort, it's important that we practice that off. There is no really how-to when it comes to diligence. It's just chanta is the only how-to. So when you have a willingness, you know the benefits, then you need to get to it.
Just like
so in the words
Nike,
of Lamhata Machayo, when he talks about meditation, the only people who cannot meditate are those who do not meditate. Then another reason why work doesn't get done is because you're doing it inconsistently. It's not consistent, and therefore your work is not successful. Your shop does not become quite successful as much as you'd like. That is because you lack the mind, or citta, which actually means consistency of mind, stability of mind, focused, sticking with what you're doing. So having developed a willingness and an effort, we need to keep up the consistency.
What
then
next?
Finally, just being somebody who gets things done is not sufficient to be really successful in your work, whether meditation or material work. We have to be reflective as well. Reflect on how you're going to improve your work. There is some reflection needed in every work that we do. We need to find a new angle or a new way that we can improve on our work. And that we call the quality of investigation, or vimamsa. When we have these four qualities, then we have, whether we are meditating or we are successful we are trying to find success in a material sense, we can accomplish a lot if we have these four qualities. But if you want to go into more detail, our deputy abbot and teacher Lompata Tachivo, he broke it down into another three qualities, which I think is quite apt, quite clearly put. He said, first of all, you need to be very observant of yourself. Secondly, train yourself to do everything the best. Be detailed in everything you do, and always try to find ways to improve. So you can see this is a very similar thing. And he said, even if you just talk about, your work, you need to have regular meditation to improve also in your work. Whatever kind of job you're doing, you need to have regular meditation to whatever extent you have time, because that gives you the strength, the ability to continually improve upon yourself. I always like to think of meditation as a sort of way to warm up your mind and make sure that your mind can be adjusted, as they call in neuroscience the plasticity of the brain, the ability to develop continuously. And that's only possible if you meditate. Otherwise, you're going to stick to your habits as they are right now, and there will be no change.
Okay. Well, let's go back to our second level of goal or aim in life.
Yeah. So there is also the long-term goal, which is more about developing good qualities of the mind and the heart. These are the sort of qualities which in Buddhism are seen to something that you develop throughout many lifetimes, that are connected with our daily habits. He starts off with accomplishment of faith. Faith in Buddhism is not just being Buddhist. Faith in Buddhism is a belief that whatever you do matters. All your actions matter because everything we do comes back to us. That is faith, especially when it comes down to good qualities. That is what we call faith. So if you believe that when you do something and no one in the world notices, but it's a good thing, that comes back to you, then that is faith. Here, the main point is that you believe there is a law of karma, and that law of karma is affecting your life. Whatever you do matters. Then there is the accomplishment of moral discipline. That's about the 5 silas, or the 5 precepts, which are the basic kind of moral practice that we think in Buddhism is important. That includes not killing living beings, which is common sense, but it also includes animals, and not taking what is not given, which is theft. That it means responsibility in your sexual relationships or in your relationships in general. And it also means speaking truth. It also includes avoiding alcohol and cigarettes. And that one is a bit odd for many people living in the West, but we should not forget that there have been many periods, especially about 100 years ago, that was actually a very common criticism in those days, that alcohol is very destructive for our well-being. But it's not only about limiting yourself in what you do and what you can't do, but it's also about generosity. It's about the habit of giving. How generous are you to your fellow human beings, the friends you have, the poor you take care of? Do you take care of charity? Do you spend on charity? And do you spend on a good cause, whether it's a religious good cause or any other good cause? That is all generosity, and we'll go into detail more about that later. And there's also the accomplishment of wisdom. This is also a fourth quality of the spiritual life, which is the highest quality in Buddhism, as it leads us to enlightenment, which is the highest goal of Buddhism that I mentioned previously, the highest goal of nirvana. Nirvana and enlightenment are the same thing in Buddhism. But the accomplishment of wisdom starts off with the basic understanding of how to lead your life in a good and responsible way. And in that sense, it's a sort of knowledge. But it eventually it becomes a sort of insight into reality as it really is, without name and label, as why we suffer and how we can overcome this suffering. And understand the real reality as it is, that the impermanent nature, the not self nature, and the nature of suffering in life.
Now that you mentioned about this, can we combine these two aims in life together so that way we can live and go more higher in spiritual way? All right.
So let us first start by showing the relation between the two kinds of success. Okay, so there's material success and spiritual. How are the two related? So when we look at the sort of happiness that we have in life, now there's one little teaching that the Buddha mentions, in which the Buddha mentions that there are four kinds of happiness in life. And this very much clarifies things. He says, first of all, people are happy when they have things, but it's a sort of limited kind of happiness. There's also still suffering in it. We are happy we have things and that we can use this wealth, but he does say it's wealth that comes from a good, responsible income, not earning your living over the suffering of other people by using some scam or something like that. So happiness of ownership. And secondly, the happiness of enjoyment is the happiness that we can spend our money as the way we like. It's a freedom.
Yes.
Even the Buddha recognized that. He was a successful person before he became a monk. He knew about a wealthy life. He knew about those things. There is a certain happiness in it, especially if we also use it to do good. And there's a certain kind of happiness in a material life, which is the happiness of freedom from debt. Not having any debts to clear, not, being free. That is also a great joy, which many people in the world cannot afford. So if we have that kind of happiness, we should consider ourselves very fortunate. But the Buddha says the happiness of leading a blameless life is much higher than all these three combined. So even if you combine the three, they are not as happy as the fourth kind of happiness, which is the happiness of a blameless life. In other words, a moral and responsible life leads to a much more higher and fulfilling happiness than just being materially successful. But we can combine these in one single way of living your life, which we might call responsible wealth, which is the word that I'm using now. I've heard also some people use the word earning to give. Earning to give is also a concept in which people develop wealth, earn wealth in order to be generous, in order to help support good causes. But there's a few caveats there. There's a few traps that we have to be careful about that. So Buddhism does see a path in which wealth can be used in a good way, and it's not critical of that.
Okay, can you explain about
Yeah.
this?
Sure. So there's 10 ways that the Buddha describes we can use our wealth, whether it's positive or negative. These are all not monks or nuns. These are people living in society, okay? These are common people who have a job to do and they have a way to survive. But do they have a good way to survive? Well,
All right.
first of all, the worst case scenario, there is the person who earns his money in the wrong way by having a criminal enterprise or having criminal activities. He doesn't use the money to take care of himself. He doesn't use the money to give to other people, and he doesn't use the money to give to charity. And he's also attached to the money. This is the worst case scenario, and the Buddha doesn't think there is anything good about that. Then there is the selfish criminal who does use the money to take care of himself. Well, that's good at some point, I guess, because at least he's kind to himself. But it's still very bad because the money is earned over the suffering of other people.
Okay.
And it's not used for the higher cause, anything other than himself. Then there are some people who is like the sort of mafia boss, the sort of godfather type.
Oh.
Now, these kind of people, they earn their money in the wrong way. It's all wrong. It all leads to other people suffering. But they do take care of other people. They use their money to take care of other people. This is the sort of mafia kind of generosity, You are my friends. I take care of you. You have a drink with me or something like that. And they might even give to charity. A lot of criminal people give to charity. Why? Because they want to look good to society. They also want to be a good person somewhere in their heart. But it's, of course, it's all distorted. And you will see this again and again in this list of 10 people that the Buddha gives. If you can't tick off the first box, earning the money in the right way, if you can't tick off that box, whatever good you try to do with that money, it's just never going to really work out because your intention is not pure from the start.
I see.
Then there is the case when somebody earns his or her money, sometimes in a legal way, sometimes not. I'm just using the word moonlighter. Somebody who's kind of not very good at what they do. They kind of not very much trained for what they do. They do a lot of illegal jobs, which they don't pay taxes. Sometimes some of these moonlighters, they might do jobs in which they are aware that there may be some illegal aspects, but they just don't ask. This kind of person is not really responsible for their wealth either. But they might do so for economical reasons, in which we come to the fifth person, the easygoing moonlighter. They take care of themselves, take care of their family, the people that they love. The Buddha actually only uses the word taking care of yourself. But I'm including the family here as well. So a person who is kind of easygoing and sloppy in his jobs might find a job when he knows it's not really legal, and he might sometimes do that only for himself, sometimes also do it to take care of his family as well. But it's still not the right way to go because the source of the income is still not right. Something off here. And sometimes later you might regret what you have done if you understand that the money doesn't come from a good source.
I see.
Then there's 5 more kinds of people who use their wealth in some fashion. So there's the sort of old boys network kind of style. This sort of a guy that in a common kind of company, you might meet such a person, maybe in a bank, maybe in a big enterprise. They earn their money not always in the right way, but it's kind of covered up a bit. You can't really notice there's corruption going on. And they use their money to take care of themselves. They give to others. They even might give to charity. But the source of the income from the start is based on corruption. is based on helping each other out, insider training, whatever. There is something going on which isn't right. It's just a little fishy. It's just not right. But it's hard for anyone to find out because they've got this entire network of people that they give to, that they generous to. As I mentioned from the start, there is generosity, but when you can't really tick off the first box, it's very hard to get it right later. So the generosity is based on not good income. So there's another kind of case, okay? There's the case when somebody does get their money. So all the other four types of people are all people who get their money in the right way. They obtain their money through their own efforts, in a legal way, by paying taxes, and in a way that doesn't lead to other people suffering. And it also means, in Buddhism, that it's not coming from a source of income that leads to other people suffering in a legal way. So you're not the owner of a casino, which is legal, but in many countries it's legal, but in Buddhism that would be still based on other people's suffering. The worst case scenario in this case is a Scrooge. As far as I can recall the story, he did earn his living in a legal way.
Right.
It wasn't based on the suffering of other people, although that's not completely clear. But okay, suppose that somebody earns their living in a positive way, it's generally okay, but they just use it to take care of themselves. Or worse even, they don't even use it for themselves. They put everything in a bank account and they never even use it anymore.
Just enjoy
they
counting
might
the
be
number.
very wealthy people, but they never use it. Those people also exist.
I see.
Like a person that is actually wealthy but still lives very poor, that can also happen. In the time of the Buddha, there were some people who were so stingy that they lived very poor, their family lived very poor.
Okay, what
so
next?
There's the Scrooge, which only takes care who doesn't even take care of himself, and there's the self-absorbed person who does take care of himself and his family, but the money is maybe coming from a good source, but he doesn't think about the bigger cause. He doesn't believe that giving to other people is going to help other people. Money always gets lost at some point. I mean, it's not a permanent thing anyway. So why worry so much about when you are giving to a generous cause or a good cause?
Right.
Anyway, there's two kinds of people who are wealthy and use it to take care of themselves, but also give to others and give to charity. But even in this case, the Buddha said there is a difference. I will call these two kinds of people, the remaining two, philanthropists. Okay, people who like to give as part of their livelihood, as part of their living. They earn to give, they like to give, they like to be part of a greater cause. Even in that case, there are some philanthropists who still are worried and concerned about their own wealth. That is because they are still attached to it. Even though they give a lot, there's still an attachment. It can happen.
Right.
And that's why the Buddha said, apart from giving and being generous, we should also reflect on the things we have. That one day, that wealth, we're going to have to lose it. If we're not giving it away, we're going to have to lose it someday. If it doesn't get stolen, it doesn't get damaged, it loses its value, at some point in time, we're going to have to leave this world behind. And we're going to leave this wealth anyway. That's like the example of Ebenezer Scrooge, right?
Yeah, right.
So we're going to have to leave this world behind. And then what can you do with that wealth? So when you reflect on that, then even the last attachment you have to that wealth, it will disappear. And then in that case, even though the generosity might be the same, you will be much happier. Why? Because you're no longer attached to the wealth. You only see it for what it is. That is what? That is, it's a sort of tool to do good.
Mm.
And when the wise people look at wealth, look at anything material, they see it as a tool to do good. Nothing more, nothing less.
Right.
So that is a very profound and deep way of looking at the material success, looking at material wealth. But it also makes the distinction between material and spiritual success disappear. You earn to be a good person, you earn to be generous.
So as it is, the money that they own, they should use it for others and for themselves. So that way they can own the money entirely, not the money own them, right?
Exactly.
So in conclusion, the wealth that we own are the tools to do something good for others and ourselves. So that way we can find our life much more meaningful and more happiness. So this way we can live the life of a good person and define success in our life completely. So that's to make it short in summarize. We have to aim our life in 3 goals. So that way we can make ourselves become successful in material world and spiritual world. These are what we define success in life. So that way you can do good to your life and for others who need our help. So everyone, hopefully what our Venerable Sander giving us today can be benefit to you on how you live your life and define yourself the meaning of success. Thank you for watching our Good Questions, Good Answer. We hope to see you again in the next question. See you again next time. Thank you, Venerable Sander.
Thank you, Lumpy. Thank you, Venerable Pisit.